He is Jalen Rose. I'm David Jacoby.
What
we
up,
are
though?
Jalen Jacoby. What is it that we do?
Give the people what they want.
Jamal Murray has extended the Denver Nuggets season. Nate McMillan is no longer the head coach of the Pacers, but we start with Kawhi and Paul George. Yes, Paul George and Montrezl Harrell all having big games in a dominant win over the Mavericks. Jalen, did you like what you saw from the Clippers?
I did, and you know how much I love boxing, arguably more than basketball. And watching this series and the Lakers, who I anticipate we're going to win in 5 when it started, it's the culmination of punches. And so now all of a sudden, when you pick a team, it looks good. Yeah, Luka's been outstanding, and he's captured our imagination that let us know that he's going to be one of the great players to do this for a really long time. But what ends up happening in a series is like different rounds of a fight. And later in the fight, those body blows and those headshots start to have an accumulation. There's aches and pains. There's nicks and bruises. You start to get familiar with your opponent, and then your depth starts to play a factor. And one of the things that the Dallas Mavs are going to have to caution themselves going forward is, can Kristaps Porzingis stay healthy? Just think about this, Jacoby. There was a 3 or 4 month span before the bubble started. And he started in the bubble and he looked outstanding at moments. But then now in the playoffs, he's injured. So I just hope going forward with his size that he's going to be able to stay healthy, because they're a dynamic duo. As it relates to the Clippers, they're just a better team. They have more depth. Their big-time players showed up, and that's how you get a victory in the playoff series.
You know, I've been working in the media for a very long time, and we always ask for honesty and candidness from our athletes. And we got some of that from Paul George, who after the game said the bubble was getting to him. He said he was dealing with anxiety, he said he was dealing with depression, and he got a lot of support and feels like he's back and engaged. And I just want to celebrate him for being so honest, because that's not an easy thing to admit, especially when you are a star basketball player going on a championship run, to say, listen, I had some trouble for a couple weeks upstairs in my own mental health. And we're all dealing with mental health problems at some level during this summer. I just want to celebrate him for coming out and saying that. And I hope that he's got it all figured out, because it certainly looked like he did yesterday. What do you think, Jalen?
I think you articulated that very well, and I agree with you. Anytime you're dealing with a pandemic and everybody's quarantined, that means you're sitting still. And when you're sitting still, you start to think. You're not under your normal schedule, and people aren't moving and functioning. The economy is horrible. People are losing their jobs. You're not playing the game that you love. There's no fans in the stands. And then you still have to go out and be A+ at your job. I appreciate him saying it, number one, but also saying it as a black man. Because so many times that we're required to be so very strong and so very macho that can run through a brick wall and nothing phases us. And then all of a sudden you show a level of humility. And I appreciate him saying that into a microphone.
Jalen, we need to lean on your NBA experience and you to take us behind the curtain. We've all seen it by now. It is Marcus Morris of the Clippers stepping on the injured ankle of Luka Doncic. He has come out and said that that was absolutely unintentional, no intention whatsoever to injure Luka Doncic. Jalen, do you believe him that this was an accident?
I'm not proud of this. I don't think it's cute or cool, but sometimes things happen when you're trying to win basketball games. If that was me, it would have been on purpose. When I watched it, I thought it was on purpose. He came out and said it wasn't on purpose. And you know those are my guys, the Morris twins. We got to get them on the show to talk about it. But this is what he does as a seasoned veteran, bring a level of physicality and to get under the other team's skin. The other best player on the Mavs is Porzingis. And do you remember earlier in the series when he got tangled up with somebody and then all of a sudden that led to Kristaps Porzingis? Getting ejected from the game, right? Getting ejected from the game. So as an OG, he's an irritant along with being productive. And so I am not surprised that he's only been mixed up with everybody on the roster, including their 2 best players.
Well, there's the action on the floor, and of course, there's what's going on in our country in the wake of the Jacob Blake shooting, and Doc Rivers spoke about it after the game.
All you do is keep hearing about fear. It's It's amazing to me why we keep loving this country and this country does not love us back. What white father has to give his son a talk about being careful if you get pulled over? It's just ridiculous. It keeps going. There's no charges. Breonna Taylor, no charges, nothing. All we're asking is you live up to the Constitution. That's all we're asking for everybody, for everyone.
Jalen, your thoughts?
So I know, like, when these conversations about humanity are had, there are going to be pockets of people in the privacy of their home or amongst their friends that look at one another and say, can we just talk about basketball? You know, I'm kind of, sick of hearing about the social justice that people of color keep talking about. And so here's what I want to do right now, Jacoby. I'll just introduce a word that we want to see: accountability. What Doc Rivers just said. We're not asking for anything special. We're not asking for no favors. We're asking to be respected and treated as equal. And so all of the people that he just acknowledged, just think about this, Jacoby. We know sports like the back of our hand. And sadly, I know the names of Tamir Rice and Eric Garner and Trayvon Martin and George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery. Like, I know these names, and it's important for me to keep saying these names for public consumption, because in most of those cases, and I'm gonna go back to my word, the police who are paid to protect and serve us, and vigilante cops and or those acting on behalf of law enforcement, you know what they did, Jacoby? Lie on the police report. Lie on the police report. And then the cops either don't get disciplined, don't get fired, don't get put in jail. So imagine if somebody committed a crime against you and no justice was served for over 400 years. How would you feel about it? It ain't just happened. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, we have some of the greatest civil rights leaders of all time. The best thing that has ever happened to the movement is a cell phone. Because now people like Jerry Jones, like, oh, well, this is happening? Yes, this is happening. And we need to get some solutions and make some change.
I think that the word accountability is really important in this discussion, because these police officers are acting as if there aren't consequences, because so often there aren't. They are so rarely charged. And when they're charged, they are so rarely convicted. And they so rarely serve any time for the murders or the assaults or the shootings that they do. And you see this happen just months after this sort of like racial reckoning in our country. You see this happen, the audacity of this police officer to shoot an unarmed person 7 times. It's almost as if that person understands and is acting as if there is no consequence. And those are the things that need to change. And also, Doc also mentioned this when he was discussing it yesterday, is the way that police officers are trained needs to be completely reformed as well. It's so tragic and that it keeps happening in the way.
And a quick point, my brother, well said. A quick point is that, you know how in sports sometimes when things happen in life and you like, you know what? I'm not going to say this or say that because it'll be tone deaf. You would think if they wanted to behave in this manner, okay, they would make sure during a quarantine that they would at least try to clean it up. Jacoby, you and I were talking about this before George Floyd on this show. We were talking about, like, wait a minute. People aren't even outside going to restaurants. The people aren't even outside. Yet the few people that happen to be outside find themselves on the wrong end of encounters with law enforcement. It just has to change.
It absolutely does. Moving on. Back to some basketball news. Elton Brand, the general manager of the 76ers, who's made a lot of moves during his tenure there, says that he is not going to make a move to trade Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid. You and I disagree with this. What do you think he should do?
Multimedia that are trumpeting that I agree. That's what he's supposed to say. What do you think he's supposed to say? Okay? He's a general manager. His job should be to field calls at all times to improve his roster. And the only two people that somebody's going to be calling about based on their current contractual situations are Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. I'm no fool. I know both of these are great players, but they operate at their apex at the same real estate in front of the hoop. So if you could get a nice deal, you see what Paul George went for to the Clippers from OK. If you could get a great deal, you got to consider it. But here's what I want you to think about, Jacoby. There aren't many teams that Joel Embiid actually fits with.
No.
And I know people are going to be like, oh, that's crazy, right? He is a fantastic player. But there are superstar level players that you can just plug in anywhere and they're going to go ball. And then there are those all-star, can be all NBA level players. It's about the situation. So on paper, it's like, oh, go put them in Golden State. No, not really. They want to spread out. They want to shoot the three. And, you know, that. So I can go down teams in the lottery, for example, that probably wouldn't be a fit, of course, based on his contractual situation. And so if I'm Philadelphia, I am considering it.
I'm absolutely considering moving Joel Embiid based on what I saw in the bubble and what I've seen from him in his entire career and what Philadelphia should do with their roster. One thing he didn't mention was trading Horford or Harris because nobody wants those contracts. So he didn't have to mention that. But if you look at Joel Embiid's performance over the course of a game, this is now a pattern. It looks like he gets fatigued as the contest goes on. It's just the way it is when you watch the games. Anyone who's watched a Sixers game has seen his performance decline as the game moves on, and the numbers also back it up. Look at the shooting percentage going way down, the rebounds going way down, and the fouls going up. And it's not like he's playing less minutes in the second half either.
Jacoby, here's the one thing as a player, as you start to get older, we joke about the inability to stop on a dime, okay? When you see Russell Westbrook going as fast as he can and he just launches from the elbow, that's called stopping on a dime, right? When you watch a Philadelphia 76ers game, the most skilled, the most talented big man on their team, one of the best ones in the game, all NBA player, Joel Embiid is always on the floor. Why is he always on the floor? Because not only he has a history of injury, but there's something that, like your legs become rubber. So now he just bumps into somebody. It could be a smaller guy. It could be a bigger guy. He just falls down. Like I would believe in the previous game the previous series that they just played, he probably fell 50 times. And you remember that for Dwayne Wade earlier in his career as a smaller guy, he had to learn how to navigate to stay on his feet. And then he was able to keep himself healthy. Joel is going to continue to have to be load managed because he hasn't been able to stay healthy. So to your point, it's kind of hard to stay in tip-top shape when you can't practice every day and or play every game.
Nate McMillan is surprisingly out of the head coach of the Pacers. We'll discuss that and much more. Stay tuned. You're watching Jalen Jacoby. Welcome back to Jalen and Jacoby. It is time for this segment where Jalen decides what we discuss. It is Keep It Moving. If you would like to discuss the topic, just say hit the brakes. If not, me, you and Met the Band jump in the minivan and keep it moving. And we start with some breaking news. Surprising out of Indiana. Looks like there's a coaching vacancy. Keep moving or hit the brakes.
Hit the brakes.
Nate McMillan, fresh off an extension, has been relieved of his duties as the head coach of the Pacers. What does this tell you in terms of timing?
You know how much affection I have for Indianapolis and the Pacers and everything they did for me, my career, and ultimately moving me to the suburbs and stabilizing my career. I'm really disappointed about how this all played out for multiple reasons. Number one, he's done an amazing job with that team. Okay, to play in that market, Jacoby, you're not just getting the A-list free agent that's going to come there and sign a max deal. You have to draft well and you have to trade well. And then you have to nurture the players that you have. And then all of a sudden you could go sign a Malcolm Brogdon. But first, you got to get Oladipo for Paul George from OKC. And then all of a sudden he becomes an all-star. And then Sabonis this year was an all-star. They outplayed expectations basically each time. And so for him to just get an extension, for them to be so banged up in the playoffs and them to fire him right after this, during this climate in a bubble, when teams talking about cost cutting based on the climate and the unemployment rate and, just how COVID has damaged the economy. But the other thing, he just so happens to be a black man doing a really good job, and they just fired him seemingly for no reason after just giving him an extension. So I can't wait to hear why they felt like this was the time to relieve him of his duties.
If they just gave him an extension, which they did, and they lost a series that wasn't that competitive to the Heat, who are a great team, without an all-star player, something tells me that there was a big blow-up. That's my guess, reading between the lines, that there was a big blow-up between the front office members and Nate McMillan that sort of led to them parting ways so soon after getting an extension. Moving on, we have a big, decisive Game 5 in the Western Conference tonight. Keep it moving or hit the brakes.
Hit the brakes.
Houston Rockets and the Thunder are now tied at 2-2. How do you think this series will swing this evening?
So initially when this series started, I think the Rockets announced that Russell was going to miss the first couple of games. And now that it's later in the series, I'll say on wax something I told you off wax, is that I don't believe he's going to play this series. So therefore, if the Houston Rockets are going to find a way to advance, of course, James Harden has got to be terrific. And his terrific is 40 plus. Daniel House Jr. has to be making shots and be a wild card. Covington, Gordon, Austin Rivers can't have zero like he did in the previous game. But for the Thunder, it's their three-guard flow. Can their three guards control the tempo? That's going to be the key.
Keep an eye on Schroeder. I love Schroeder so much. One of my favorite six men of the year candidates. Moving on, the Detroit Lions canceled practice.
Hit the brakes.
Hit the brakes. Matt Patricia. Matt Patricia made a statement about the reason they canceled practice. Just football didn't seem important. He wanted to make sure that his guys were okay in the wake of the Jacob Blake shooting. What do you think about this move from the Lions and Patricia?
So, I always talk about the score of the game and the game of life. And there were a lot of teams on multiple different levels that actually went out and practiced with heavy hearts and things on their mind as it relates to social injustice that are taking place in our country. But I'm proud of my Detroit Lions to be the one team to actually make a difference, be the loudest voices. And I know when we look up and we start talking about all-time great teams and franchises and championships, of course, we're going to be the laughing stock. But today, they're getting a championship banner in my heart.
That is well put. Even I cannot make fun of the Lions today. Moving on, Russell Wilson says he wants to play football for quite some time. Keep it moving or hit the brakes.
No surprises. As long as they're going to pay you, keep doing it. Keep it moving.
We keep it moving. We keep it moving.
We have the first no-hitter of the MLB season. Keep it moving or hit the brakes.
Did you say baseball? Keep it moving.
Wake up. Jalen, wake up. Jalen, wake up.
Moving. We keep it moving.
Messi might be on the move. Keep moving or hit the brakes.
It's going to be news when he lands somewhere. Keep it moving for now.
We keep it moving. We keep it moving.
Jalen, a piece of hip-hop history.
Hit the brakes.
Is up for auction. The famous crown that Biggie Smalls wore in some of the most legendary images of him is now up for auction. It says it might go for about $300,000. Will you be bidding on this piece of history?
I was bidding on that piece of history until the 300,000 figure came out of your mouth. As you was introducing this topic, I was thinking about the Jada bust, and I was thinking, I'm getting that crown. And in my head, I played What's Your Number? And I was like, I'll go 50 to 75,000 to get that. That's what I was telling myself.
Yes.
And then you said 300,000, so not going to be able to do it.
I will go $50 to $75 on that. Moving on. Huge game tonight between the Lakers and the Blazers without Dame Lillard. We'll preview that and much more. Stay tuned. You're watching Jalen Jacoby. Welcome back to Jalen and Jacoby. Jalen, Jamal Murray put on for Denver last night to extend their season. What a star turn it was from Murray. What do you think of the performance?
That's what I'm talking about. I told you I was worried about the pecking order with our Nuggets that we've been gassing the last couple of years, led by the Joker, hitting 5 threes, and Murray taking 25 shots because he need to. not spreading them out throughout the roster and being aggressive, putting up great numbers. I'm loving the duel between him and Donovan Mitchell. The last 2 games, not only has he put up big numbers, zero total turnovers.
Wow, it really looked like he could not miss in the fourth quarter. And Jalen, just very quickly, I want to celebrate this play. Because you see where it starts at the logo, splits the defense, and then jumps up, takes the contact, spins, and finishes at the rim. This was spectacular, and this is exactly what they need to become a true duo in Denver. Moving on, Jalen. Last night, some hardware was given out. Giannis Antetokounmpo was the Defensive Player of the Year. Do you think he is deserved of this award?
I'm a voter, and I picked Anthony Davis. The Lakers' defense drastically improved, and I know Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee's giving them quality minutes up front, but they not like Brook Lopez. And Giannis and him form twin towers defensively, where Brook Lopez is going to also be All-NBA. There won't be another Laker All-NBA defensively. I picked AD.
Jalen, the Lakers play tonight, Game 5 against the Blazers. The Blazers are without Damian Lillard. What is the roadmap for an upset for the Blazers without Dame?
Well, they're going to be in trouble. The series ends tonight. Portland became a feel-good story, the way Dame captured everybody's minds in the bubble by putting up big performances. But the Los Angeles Lakers understand did not carry a series led by LeBron James. It's over tonight.
We will be back on Friday. We're off tomorrow. Enjoy the playoffs. Make sure you listen to our podcast.
You're far too kind.